Welcome out there. You are listening to another episode of 914 Wired. I am Ardina Stewart along with Charles Stern. Our third leg, Peter Moses, is out for the day, but he will be back next week in force. And today I'm happy to say we have repeat guests because they were so good the last time, they came back again, courtesy of J.P. Morgan Chase in the house. We have Kristina Vazquez and Wayne Q. Is it Wayne Q or Wayne O? Wayne Davis. I'll leave out the initial. And today, they did such a great job talking about financial literacy on our past show last year that they came back because it needs to be repeated and also updated with new information. There are three things that we need in life. Four things: food, water, love, and money. So, and the thing is that money can be kind of elusive if you don't know how to spend it or actually how to organize it. So we're going to discuss that today. So I'm going to throw it out to ladies first. I'm going to throw it out to Kristina. Kristina, what's the most important thing we need to know about financial literacy?
The most important thing we need to know about financial literacy is that it goes hand in hand with with our mental health and our physical health, because most people are worried about their finances, and so there's an overall impact to our overall well-being. So being financially healthy ties directly into our overall health.
Wayne, now I'm going to put
Yes.
you in the hot seat. I'm going to put you in the hot seat. At what age should people learn about financial literacy? I mean, do you start it off as children? Do you start do you is it too late to learn at middle age? When do you need to educate? When does one need to educate oneself about financial literacy?
I think, Ardina, it's a great question, and thank you and Charles for having us. You can never start too early. Christina and I do workshops in the communities for young people as young as 5 years old. And really, what we begin to focus on is wants versus needs. And I think the psychology of money starts at an early age. And I always share my personal story. When I would go out with my mom, there were a lot of things I would want, and there were a lot of no's that came with that. And so when I was able to earn my own money, I didn't want to deny myself the things that I wanted. That can have a positive as well as a negative impact. If we teach young people the difference between needs and wants, they'll make better choices with their finances.
That's a very very important distinction because there's you hear this phrase not compulsive. Well, there's compulsive buying, and there's also emotional buying, and I think that's what you're talking about. Where if you're feeling, I mean, women I think are more guilty of it than men. Where if you're feeling kind of bad, you say, something, I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to buy myself a new dress or a new shirt or a pair of new shoes to cheer myself up. And that item will sit in your closet for 6 months, 7 months, sometimes a year, and you never ever use it. But the thing is, you go to the store because you buy something, it gets the serotonin uptake working, and you start to feel better. But it's only temporary. So how do you? This is the question to both of you. Delayed delayed reaction. How do you subdue that need to run out to the store and buy something from an emotional point of view?
How do you
Um,
teach
I,
delayed gratification?
Gratification. That's what I'm looking for.
it's a great point that you make, and it really goes back to where I ended with choices and not looking at, like, for example, having a budget is not a bad word. It's not the B word. Managing yourself and managing how you spend your money will give you greater rewards in the long run. But it's really reprogramming your mind to understand and believe in that. And that's the challenge in the work that Christina and I do in the communities. And it does take a lot of effort. We struggle ourselves, even though we teach financial literacy. We ourselves have to admit to our audiences that it's a struggle that we have. I like a new suit just as much as anyone else. And so you said only women, but myself, I like to make those emotional purchases as well. And I have to remind myself that I have a bigger goal. Whether it's saving for a vacation or planning on making improvements on the house, that's far more important and more rewarding in the long run than getting a new pair of shoes or a new suit.
Yeah,
So
I also
Wayne,
think that, oop, I'm
go
sorry,
ahead. No,
Charles.
no,
I
go
also
ahead,
think
Christina.
being able to identify where you currently are in your journey, like being able to identify where you are and where you need improvement, right? So just having that awareness so that you can make different choices. I think that's an important part too. Ardina, you talk about retail therapy, which I'm also
Yes.
familiar with. And boy, does it feel good to come home with that new suit or that new pair of shoes. But when you have to readjust your budget, for that, you have the opposite effect. So just really being honest about the long-term impact of those choices and empowering the audience to make a different choice.
So tell me a little bit more about these audiences, Christina and Wayne. Do you go out as a team? Are they young people, old people, schools, churches? Where are you showing up?
Charles,
Yeah,
all of the
absolutely.
above. Go ahead, Christina.
All the above.
Uh, yes, all of the above. To Wayne's point, Wayne and I have had the really the pleasure of being able to partner throughout Westchester County. We are community managers. I cover the Yonkers area, and Wayne covers
Ah,
Mount Vernon. So we're very strategically placed in these communities to help improve the financial health. So we partner with local organizations and their programming to deliver on various financial health topics.
Now we should explain that you're coming through Chase,
That's
Yes.
correct?
correct.
Chase.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
thanks.
And so, if I was a principal of an elementary school, how would I access your help? Do I
Well,
call
that's a
Chase? Do I call a
great question.
branch? Who do I call?
Well, we have community branches that we've actually placed hundreds of them across the country. Christina has two community branches in Yonkers. There's one in Mount Vernon, and so we make it real public that we're here to serve the community. Members of the community can even use that space for public events and things like that with enough notice. So if someone were to come in a branch and ask to speak to a community manager, but we're out in the community and we want to make them aware. So you're very good. We haven't reached everyone, Charles, but what we
And
try
wait,
to do,
where is that facility located?
22
So
West First Street in Mount Vernon. And
Oh, very nice.
Christina is at the Yonkers Station branch as well as South Broadway. I'm sorry, South Broadway.
410 South Broadway and 270 Sawmill River Road in Yonkers, New York.
Okay, so
That is,
there's physical
wow.
facilities that are available to various groups that want to avail themselves of these services. I assume there's classroom-like environments within these places where people can sit down.
Yeah,
Yes.
Charles, these community branches are equipped with
Telepresence.
teleprompt, yeah,
Telepresence.
telepresence
Wow.
and seating for our audience. We host monthly events in our locations on various topics for audiences and community members that maybe cannot join a community organization events. So we have public events that happen once a month in each of our locations on different topics as well.
Yeah.
So
That is excellent. That's excellent.
what are some of the misconceptions? I'm most interested in young people. What are their misconceptions about money? What are they missing?
I'm going to give you an old fact that money buys you happiness.
And
Right?
and you think they think that.
Well, when you look at our society and the things that are acquired, whether it's a high-end pair of sneakers that children are demanding from their parents, sweatsuits that they're demanding, and what we all know is that having a pair of high-end sneakers or a fashionable sweatsuit does not make you happy. And so, what we try to really impart to them is that your happiness comes from within. And that when you really choose experiences and moments that matter with family and friends, that is more joyful than anything you can acquire.
And I'm going to add on to that. I'm a mother of three children. I have a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old.
Wow.
And so some of the things we talk about at home is how to use money responsibly, right? Like, what does that look like? What's important to you as an individual? So it may be giving back, it may be fashion. To Wayne's point on the sneakers. So just creating the balance between the needs versus the wants, and then our responsibility as citizens, right? Um, So just helping them to understand that. And many times, I think about when I was growing up, money was nothing we spoke about at home. I saw mom work hard for her money. I talked about that during our last interview. And so for me, it was about making it to just making it right with money you make. Just make sure you're paying your bills, and making it and kind of making it through. And so as we teach and we speak to students in Yonkers and Mount Vernon and throughout Westchester County, what we want them to know is we want them to have awareness, right? So that although this is a topic that requires consistency of message, that they are aware. These are the things that you have to think of, right? These are the things you have to plan for, because when we make a mistake with our finances, it takes a long time to repair that. So having this information up front would, ensure that they're thinking twice before they make the type of mistakes that will take years to repair, setting them back, and hopefully closing that economic gap in these communities.
And how do you message that to a 12, 13, 14-year-old?
We've got activities. So one we have is build your own skateboard, and we give them a
Okay.
budget, and they can add things to their skateboard. And then here's the real kicker: did anyone have anything left over? So we'll have a group of children who will
Wow.
use their entire budget and accessorize their skateboard, and then we'll have some that says, "I have $10 left. I have $5." And I said, "Well, why didn't you use it all?" And she said, "Well, maybe there's an emergency. I may have to change one of the wheels on my skateboard." So there are young people who actually think about the future. And so these are subtle lessons that help the children. For our older children, I always give an example. I said, if I gave you $100,000, what would you do right now? Most people talk about the things. No one says, I'll pay off all my bills. And one of the lessons that I show them is if you reduce the bills and stop paying all that interest that you're paying to banks and other people that lend you money, you will have more power with what's left. And so those are lessons that we try to impart to the community.
Wow, that is so impressive. I love the idea with the skateboard. It's brilliant. Now, I want to ask a quick question about cautionary tales. You see a lot of athletes and some movie stars who have these $1 million contracts. By the time they're 25, 30 years old, they're worth, boku bucks. Then all of a sudden they hit a snag when they're in their mid 30s or 40, and they're broke. And you sort of scratch your head and say, well, how did they end up with nothing? How did they end up in the red when they had all of this money? And then you look and you see, well, so and so had, 10 Mercedes. They had a house that was $40 million. And then business slowed down and they couldn't pay the mortgage. So do you incorporate that into your lessons as a cautionary tale?
Absolutely. Christina actually came up with a great idea for a budget. So, in some of the organizations that we work with, we have them in groups. Create a real life scenario. What's your occupation? Are you renting or do you own? Do you want a car or do you not? How much are you spending on groceries? How much are you spending on transportation? And together they have to figure out with a set salary, and the salaries range. So it's not everyone's making 100,000. We have people that are working in supermarkets, and we have white collar, blue collar employees, and they choose from the group set. And then the real journey is figuring out that there has to be income coming in to meet your expenses. And then there has to be some residual left over for savings for emergencies and even just some of the fun things you want to do in life. So I think it's really instrumental in teaching them how to manage their finances.
So you speak to a lot of young people. Wayne,
We
what
do.
age do you think young people are able to grasp the concept of expenses versus income?
As young, you would not believe we've gone as low as 5-year-olds and maybe some below that in Yonkers, in Christina's community and my community. Today we had young people, we were talking about STEM. So I think as long as you simplify it, even when you go to the supermarket with the young folks, it's an opportunity for parents to teach. A child is always like, give me the Cheerios, right? And that could be an instructive lesson to mom and dad. I can get the Cheerios, but then mommy may not be able to pay the light bill. And we
Right.
need the lights, right?
Right.
So
Right.
we're not going to go with necessarily Cheerios. We're going to go with the store brand or the Kirkland brand, and that's what we'll go with.
So needs versus wants, income versus expense. What about some of the more advanced financial topics, or they're not even so advanced, but maybe a fifth or sixth grader could latch on compound interest, interest, those kinds of things. Do you cover that?
We do
We,
actually. Go ahead,
yes,
Christina.
we also cover the basics of banking. We cover credit, interest, those various topics. We also cover, and what most, what we want them to know along our teaching is that they have choices, right? And in every workshop that we facilitate, that's covered in there. So there are the choices on where to bank, how to bank, from check cashing places to financial institutions. So all these choices, but what's the one that's going to help you on your journey best, right? And then as far as credit is concerned, when do you start establishing credit? How soon do you have to check credit? What are the components that go into credit? And again, one of those, the choices that we make have long-term impact.
And so, is your practice primarily Yonkers and Mount Vernon?
And all of Westchester as
Oh,
well.
it's all of Westchester. Okay, so
Westchester County.
in Westchester we have widely varying levels of wealth. Do you notice differences between this kind of a workshop when you conduct it in a middle to upper class community versus a community where there's high needs economically?
Absolutely.
And what are the differences?
The differences are the ones in affluent don't really hear no often. So one of the questions that when we talk about needs and wants is, have you ever been out and asked mom or dad for something and mom or dad said, no, we cannot afford that, right? Or
Okay.
no, we can't afford that. And then the ones in affluent communities, they don't really have that personal experience. Their experiences are more mom and dad maybe requiring them to do something, a chore, something around the house to do the experience. Where those in our underserved communities, they hear no quite frequently, right?
Because the resources just aren't there.
They're right. The funds are just not there. And
Right.
so we have discussions about how they in their lives can one be mindful of their parents. So we try to help the parents as well on understanding why mom says no or dad says no, and what can you do even as a 5-year old to help mom or dad. And some of them you'll be surprised, it's like, well, I won't have to ask for the Cheerios, or I don't have to have that toy, right? I can
I
wait for birthday or Christmas and things like that, but it's really teaching them how to navigate the choices that they make, and even asking for something is a choice.
Yeah, Wayne, you're doing if you're doing these workshops in Mount Vernon, in Yonkers, in New Rochelle, and other places where there are kids with high needs, you must be hearing all kinds of things, all kinds of concepts about money. I'm really would be fascinated to know more about what they think of money, where money comes from, the scarcity of money. We're talking about there are kids that don't have a full refrigerator every day. I mean, we've interviewed people on this show, even recent weeks, even the lady from Feeding Westchester was telling us that, what was it, Ardina? Something like 1 in 3 families has food
Or
insecurity.
food
It
insecurity.
was a
It was
stunning number.
stunning,
Yeah.
a stunning number.
So you have to be talking to kids who are coming from, really, really skinny resources in their personal lives. So I'm wondering, what it's like to talk to a kid about these money concepts when they're really don't have it.
I'm gonna excuse me. I'm gonna turn that over to Christina.
Thank you, Wayne. So I think that when we teach about money concepts, really we're teaching a behavior and how to view, again, back to the choices. It doesn't matter how much or how little you have. The idea is that when we're making responsible choices, and the recipe for that is the balance between need versus wants. And that's really where we put our focus. Many times, in my opinion, the students who may be experiencing food insecurity, that's not something they're wearing. That's something they're kind of They're just like any other student, just sitting in the classroom and trying to absorb all the knowledge possible. So the message is consistent. And even when we're in the affluent areas, we're having that conversation about needs versus wants,
Right.
because the behaviors are the same. That what's different is the access to resource.
Right. But what they're hearing from you is it's possible to get a bank account. A bank is a place to keep money. You can earn interest if you invest and so on. And what is credit and what does it mean to buy something if you don't have the amount of money necessary to purchase that thing, but you use credit to purchase it with? I can see how those concepts could be, those are life, those are life lessons. Without a
Yeah,
doubt.
and we try to give them examples, Charles. For example, when does it make sense to use a credit card? Uh, you're starting college. You need a laptop to do your work. Should you use the $2,000 in your savings account, or should you use the credit card and have a plan on paying it off without incurring too much interest on that purchase? And so we
What's the
point.
what's the answer to that question?
You know what? Just like the psychology of money, it's different for everyone depending on your financial situation. And so, for example, if someone has a better, like they're doing a work study and their income is very limited because it's from the college or things like that, versus someone who maybe got a telemarketing job and they're doing very well in that telemarketing job. I did telemarketing when I was in college. I think they still do telemarketing for undergrad, right? And so that person may be earning them, although they're both in the same part as far as their matriculation, their experiences are different. So one may make the choice that I'm going to use this credit card because I don't make enough, right, to do that. Where the other
Ah,
student may say, I would rather buy the laptop and not incur the interest. There
Hmm.
are some cases where paying the interest because you need this to get something done, like even having a car or a vehicle to get to work. For some folks, that choice is very different because there's no other means of transportation. We're so fortunate in New York to have such a great transportation system. You could get around right in New York City anywhere you want to. But as you move further away and get to rural areas, their choices are much more limited
oh,
in transportation, and so a car
Right.
becomes more necessary. So those are the differences and nuances that I think are important.
Yeah, and
what
our
about?
content, or I'm sorry, Ardina, go
Go,
ahead.
go, 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 go ahead, Christina. I interrupted you.
Our content also gives examples of areas that you should be mindful of. So if you're using your credit card to purchase your everyday food, that's a red flag that you have to take a look at things. And just it gives great examples on what you have to be mindful of and where you need to make adjustments if those are your situations.
Is sometimes credit, is the devil in disguise, because it's very tempting to purchase something when you don't have the money and think, okay, I'm going to pay for it tomorrow. But then tomorrow comes and you may not have the cash. It's sort of going back to delayed gratification. Credit is a means of getting what you want at the moment without having to think about the consequences later on. But on the other hand, I mean, I think, Wayne, to your point, credit can be used as a tool to be able to purchase something responsibly. So how do you covered it to a degree, but how do you emphasize the fact that credit can either be your friend or your worst nightmare?
We have a chart that I love, and the name of it is called the high cost of credit. Now, this really pertains to those people who don't have that desirable credit score, and what it costs them in the higher interest rate for. And we give them an example. One person has great credit and they borrowed $1,000. Another person has poor credit, they borrowed the same amount. One person over the course of 3 years will pay $400 more for that item than the person that has, and that is the high cost of credit, and why it's so important to protect it and nurture it, and really have a good credit score and be mindful of how you use credit.
This reminds me a lot of the Money Smart program. Do you incorporate
Yeah.
components of Money Smart in what you do?
Well,
We do.
Christine, I'll let you speak to our relationship with Money Smart.
When you s- w- when you s- we do incorporate when you talk about money smarts. Are you referencing the FDIC? I just want to make
Yes.
sure because
Yes.
there's also a money smarts program in Westchester Community College that we partner with.
No, no, no. I'm
Strongly.
referring to the FDIC,
Okay.
which is like a quasi-governmental agency that
Yes.
insures savings accounts they have a education program called Money Smart. I believe there's a Money Smart for kids and then a Money
Yes,
Smart for
for
grown-ups.
adults
It's a fairly
and for
lengthy
seniors.
it's a
And
fairly
for
lengthy
seniors.
curriculum where they talk about credit and interest and banking, insurance, and all aspects of financial life. This sounds a lot like that. So, Christina, go ahead and tell me how you connect with Money Smart.
Yes. So we also present and we use Money Smarts as part of our curriculum for all age ranges, as Wayne just mentioned. And many of the examples and information that our curriculum is made up of includes some of the Money Smarts teachings as well.
So I got one last question for you. What
Sure.
is the most compelling, shocking question you ever got from a kid about money that made you stop in your tracks? And Wayne, I can't imagine you without words. But what question left you without words?
Well, at first I gotta tell you, the young people are. Sometimes when I'm done interacting with them, I feel so full. Full because I am hopeful that even in underserved communities, these young people shine so brightly with their desire to be helpful to their classmates, but also their dreams are so big. So, I've heard things like one person we were doing a high school. This was high school, and I said, "Well, what type of income you have?" And he says, I want passive income." And it
Mm-hmm.
blew me away. I said, "Passive income? What do
Wow.
you know about?" He says, "That means that I'm going to invest my money so that it can be making money for me while I'm asleep."
That kid is watching
Wow.
YouTube,
Yeah,
obviously.
and so I said to him, "Could you explain to your to your classmates, how you learned about passive income? I'm so blown away that you've got this concept at such an early age." And he went in and said, "Well, if I invest some money and I'm earning interest on the money that I have, even when I'm sleeping, it's making money for me." So that blew me
Wow.
away.
Okay.
That blew me away. And we get, another thing that blew me away, we always want to know the why. So young people are always talking about earning money. And when I hear some of their whys, I want to help support my mom. That's a big one. I want to help, I want to be a contributor to my family. I know my mom and dad work very hard, and I want to earn money so I can take some of the pressure off of them. I mean, to just imagine that there are young people like this that are so mindful and want to help their parents is heartwarming to me. Those are the things that blow me away in the work I do.
Ardina.
Well, you guys blow me away. I mean, I know that we interviewed you before, but we're learning more and more new things about the program, which is it's just phenomenal. I'd like to ask about math because all of these concepts require math. So does this subtly help kids improve their math skills, budgeting money?
Well, I will say that in many of the activities that we do, they are required to calculate. We spoke about budgets and planning for that
Right.
skateboard before, and the activities around family budgeting. And they're required to do some level of calculating what's left over, what percentage are we going to save? Did we reach our goal to save the amount of money we want to save?
That's
Um,
great. There can't, as far as I'm concerned, there can't be enough of that in the schools. And just a quick sidebar story. This weekend, I was in Greenwich. I went to a coffee shop. I paid with a $5 bill. The individual behind the counter had to ask another person working there how much change to give me for something that cost $4.55.
Whoa.
It really happened. This individual got through elementary school, middle school, and college. I assume college. It's hard to tell exactly, but she certainly went to high school and couldn't make change for a $5 bill without asking for help. Incredible, but that's where people are in terms of math computational capabilities, and that's a topic for another show. So the more financial awareness, knowledge you can drive out there, the better, because it's going to drive better math skills, and better math skills drive better, financial acumen. So, Christina and Wayne, thanks for coming on the show again, and thank you for spreading the word about how money works in Westchester.
thank
Ardina.
you.
Just
Thank you.
I'm I gotta say, I'm kind of blown away. I'm still thinking about that skateboard project. I wish I had known that when my kid was in high school.
You
Yeah.
guys
But
should
this
come
is,
by our next financial health event in our branches so you could see it live.
And where is
oh,
that information published someplace? Is there a website that people can look at?
We're working on that now to make it
Okay.
with the system that we've undergone, where eventually, and I would say maybe 3 to 6 weeks, they could literally go
oh,
on to the Chase website and see our events. So coming
Nice.
soon to a theater near you.
Yeah.
And how frequent are these events? How frequently are you in the schools? Like a couple times a week, couple times a month? What's the frequency with
Definitely a
which this
couple times
happens?
a week. We do a minimum of 6 financial workshops a month, but our goal is really
wow.
10 a month. So we're averaging about 2.5 every week. And even
Wow.
today, I was really pleased. A community event with STEM, and it was parents. So the parents came out, and we did, and each table group had an activity around science and technology, and they made little paper helicopters and were slow blown away. One
Wow.
kid, the helicopter came down, and the kid couldn't stop looking up. He was waiting to see another helicopter. So, things like this that really spur their imagination and their desire to do more, and more importantly, their ability that they can do it, is what really makes our jobs just so rewarding.
Yeah, and the student component is a very small, it's a 20% of what we do. We also work with families and, employers of various organizations. So we're really getting the message out on all levels.
Yes, I want to talk about. I work with the Wartburg Senior Housing in Mount Vernon, and we did a workshop on cybersecurity. And you'd be amazed at how many of our seniors are being scammed,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
educating them on what to avoid. And as they are, supposed to be the golden years of their life and enjoying all their hard work, and then there are people out there that are predators on them, and so we educate our seniors as well.
Well, thank you for what you do. And if you're going to go out into the world and talk about scams and identity fraud, then you will have enough work for the rest of your lives because there's a lot of that. So
Unfortunately.
I think that pretty much does it for today. Ardina, are we working on something for next week for when Peter gets back here?
We are. I will have you. I will have a guest for you probably within a day or two. I wish we
Cool.
could bring back Wayne and Christina, but they are on to other missions.
Yeah.
But they will be back because they have so much very, very important information, and it's a program that needs to be more widely known and widely utilized.
Well, thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All righty.